Hey everyone, welcome to Daniel Wright's Dragon Stories, where dragons and humans unite, kindness becomes strength, and friendship creates legends. Let's begin to the story.
The volcanic plains of Dracker stretched endlessly beneath a sky choked with ash and smoke. Rivers of molten rock carved glowing scars across the landscape, while geysers of superheated steam erupted at random intervals. This was a world that would kill most species within minutes, yet the Dracarii thrived here. They soared through toxic clouds on wings that could span 100 meters, their scales reflecting the orange glow of perpetual eruptions. Sarenth watched the human ship descend through the atmospheric turbulence. The vessel shook and rattled, clearly not designed for such hostile conditions. Its hull bore scorch marks from weapons fire and the patchwork repairs of desperate refugees. The Dragon Queen shifted her massive bulk on the obsidian throne, her copper scales catching the light from nearby lava flows. Around her, the Council of Elders settled onto their perches, ancient beings whose combined age exceeded 10,000 years. The humans emerged from their ship wearing environmental suits that seemed fragile as paper. They walked slowly across the heated stone, their leader carrying something wrapped in cloth. Sarenth could smell their fear, sharp and bitter even through the sulphurous air. The ambassador stopped at the base of the throne platform and removed his helmet. Sweat immediately poured down his face. Great Queen Sarenth, we come seeking asylum. His voice cracked from the heat. Our colonies have fallen. Our worlds burn. We have nowhere else to go. Elder Corvin snorted flame from his nostrils. Your weakness is not our concern, human. Dracker does not shelter prey. More humans filed into the chamber. Sarenth counted 43 in total. Men, women, elderly, children. All of them hollow-eyed and broken. One woman stumbled and fell. The others rushed to help her, but she pushed them away weakly. She clutched the bundle against her chest with desperate strength. Please. The woman's voice barely rose above a whisper. Not for us. For him. She unwrapped the cloth, revealing an infant. The baby boy looked up at the towering dragon queen with wide eyes, not crying, not screaming, just watching. Sarenth felt something shift in her ancient heart, a sensation she had not experienced in centuries. The chamber fell silent except for the distant rumble of volcanic activity. The woman coughed, and blood flecked her lips. His name is Daniel. His father died, defending our ship. I'm all he is left, and I am dying. She met Sarenth's enormous golden eyes without flinching. I do not ask you to save me. Just let him live. Please. Corvin rose to his full height, wings spreading wide. This is absurd. We are not caretakers for weak mammals. Send them back to their ship. Other elders murmured agreement. The Dracarii were conquerors, warriors, rulers of star systems. They did not raise the offspring of lesser species. It violated every tradition, every law written in fire across their history. Sarenth descended from her throne. Each step shook the ground. She lowered her head until her snout was level with the dying woman. The human did not retreat. Instead, she lifted the baby higher, offering him up. What makes you think I would not simply eat him? Sarenth asked, her voice like grinding stones. The woman smiled sadly. Because you have not already. Because you are looking at him the way I do. Because something in you recognizes that life is precious, no matter how small. The baby reached out one tiny hand towards Sarenth's scaled face. His fingers could not even wrap around one of her teeth. He made a small sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a cry. Just an expression of innocent curiosity. The woman's breathing grew ragged. Please, I have nothing to offer you. No wealth, no power, no knowledge you do not already possess. But I am a mother, and you are a mother. You have raised hatchlings. You know what it means to protect something helpless. She coughed again, harder this time. I am begging you. Sarenth extended one claw, each talon longer than the infant's entire body. She touched the baby's cheek with impossible gentleness. He grabbed her claw and held on with surprising strength. The woman placed him in Sarenth's palm. Thank you, she whispered. Then her eyes closed, and she slumped forward. The human ambassador caught her body. He checked for breathing, for a pulse, then shook his head slowly. Several humans began to weep. The baby, sensing something wrong, finally began to cry. The sound echoed through the volcanic chamber, high and piercing and utterly alien to Dracarys ears. Sarinth, you cannot be serious. Corvin's voice held warning. This is madness. We're not nursemaids. That creature will die here within days. Sarinth carefully brought the crying infant close to her chest. She folded one wing around him, creating a sheltered space where her body heat warmed him gently. The crying stopped almost immediately. The baby nestled against her scales, his small form rising and falling with her breathing. I am queen, Sarinth said quietly. My word is law. This child is now mine. He is Dracarys. The elders erupted in protest. Voices rose in anger and disbelief. But Sarinth ignored them all. She looked down at the tiny human in her care, so fragile and helpless, yet somehow still alive despite everything the universe had thrown at him. Daniel, she said, testing the name. My son. The human ambassador stepped forward hesitantly. Your Majesty, we can take him. Raise him with the other refugees. You do not need to burden yourself with this. Sarinth's eyes flashed. You question my decision? No, he is human. He needs human things. Human food, human care. Then you will teach me. Sarinth's tone left no room for argument. You will show me what he needs, and I will provide it. He is mine now. Mine to protect, mine to raise, mine to love. She turned and walked back toward her throne, the baby sleeping peacefully against her chest. Behind her, the council descended into chaos, but she paid them no attention. She had made her choice. Daniel would live. He would grow, and he would change everything. The other humans watched in stunned silence as their last hope disappeared into the depths of the Dragon Queen's lair, cradled in wings that could crush mountains. 5 years had passed since Sarinth carried a human infant into her lair. Now Daniel ran through corridors carved from volcanic rock, his laughter echoing off walls that glowed with residual heat. He navigated the massive passageways with practiced ease, knowing exactly where to step to avoid the hottest spots, which handholds were safe for small human fingers. Sarinth watched from her main chamber as her son climbed the natural stone formations like a tiny mountaineer. He had grown quickly by human standards, but remained impossibly small compared to even the youngest Dracarys hatchlings. His dark hair was always messy, his clothes specially woven from heat-resistant fibers that the human refugees had developed. He wore no shoes because he claimed he could feel the stone better without them. Mother, watch this. Daniel called in perfect Dracarys. The language was his first, though the human ambassador had insisted he also learn standard. He balanced on a narrow ledge, then jumped to catch a lower outcropping. His small body swung through empty air before he pulled himself up. Careful, little flame. Sarinth used the nickname she had given him years ago. The drop is far. I know all the safe paths. Daniel grinned at her, showing his blunt human teeth. You taught me. She had indeed. Sarinth had spent 5 years learning how to raise a human child in a world designed to kill his species. She had carved smaller chambers where the temperature stayed tolerable for his fragile biology. She had mastered the delicate art of food preparation, learning which earth plants could grow in Draker's harsh soil when properly shielded. Her claws, designed to rend metal and stone, now handled human-sized objects with surgical precision. Other Dracarys mothers often visited, curious about this bizarre arrangement. They brought their hatchlings, massive creatures already 10 times Daniel's size despite being half his age. The young dragons found the human child fascinating and confusing in equal measure. Today, 3 hatchlings arrived with their mother, Elder Vethra. The ancient dragon settled in the main chamber, while her children tumbled forward, their scales gleaming emerald and gold. Human Daniel, the largest hatchling, named Scarith, huffed small jets of flame in greeting. Come play with us. Daniel slid down from his perch and approached them without fear. He had spent his entire life among dragons. The sight of creatures that could swallow him whole triggered no instinct of terror because he had never known anything else. What game? Daniel asked. Thermal diving, Scarith announced proudly. Mother says the lava tubes are perfect today. We race through them, and whoever reaches the bottom first wins. Daniel's face fell slightly. I cannot dive through lava tubes. Too hot for me. The second hatchling, Mareth, tilted her head. Why do you not breathe fire to cool yourself? That is what we do. Humans do not breathe fire. Daniel had explained this countless times, but young Dracarys struggled to understand. We are different. Then you are weak, the third hatchling said bluntly. No fire, no flight, no proper scales. What can you even do? Saren stirred, preparing to intervene, but Daniel held up his small hand. He had learned this gesture from watching her council meetings, the universal signal for patience. I could do many things, Daniel said calmly. I can go places you cannot. Watch. He ran to a section of wall where a network of small fissures created a natural maze. The cracks were barely wide enough for a human child, far too narrow for even the smallest Dracari hatchling. Daniel slipped into the maze and disappeared. The hatchlings rushed to the wall, pressing their snouts against the openings. They could see Daniel moving through the internal passages, navigating turns that would be impossible for their bulk. He emerged from an opening 20 feet higher, waving down at them. Now I am above you, he called, and you cannot follow. Scareth snorted in frustration. That is just because you are small. Yes. Daniel climbed back down, dropping the last few feet with practiced ease. I am small, but small can be useful. I can reach places you cannot. I can fix things your claws are too large to touch. I can see details you miss because I'm closer to the ground. Mareth considered this. But you still cannot breathe fire. No, but I understand fire. Daniel walked to a nearby thermal vent where flames danced across the opening. He picked up a piece of metal slag and held it in the updraft. Fire needs three things: fuel, heat, and air. Remove any one, and fire dies. Your fire is part of you, but mine can be made from knowing how things work. He adjusted the metal piece, directing the airflow. The flames changed color from orange to blue-white. The hatchlings gasped. How did you do that? Scareth demanded. Temperature depends on oxygen mix. Blue fire is hotter than orange fire. I cannot make fire from my body, but I can control fire by understanding it. Daniel returned the metal to its original position, and the flames shifted back. Mother taught me. She knows fire because she is fire. I know fire because I study it. Vethra rumbled with approval. Wisdom over instinct. Your mother has taught you well, human child. Sarenth felt pride warm her chest. Daniel had found his own path, his own strength. He would never be Dracari in body, but his mind was sharp as any dragon's claws. The hatchlings left eventually, chattering among themselves about the strange human who knew fire without breathing it. Vethra lingered. Corvin still speaks against you in the council, the old dragon said quietly. He claims you grow soft, that raising the human weakens Dracari image across the galaxy. Corvin measures strength only in flame and fury. Sarenth curled protectively around where Daniel sat organizing his collection of different mineral samples. He does not see that strength has many forms. Perhaps. Vethra's ancient eyes studied the child. But times are changing. The council will not ignore him forever. Eventually, they will demand proof that your decision was correct. Then we will provide proof. Sarenth's voice carried absolute certainty. Daniel is my son. He is Dracari, regardless of what shape his body takes. And one day, the entire galaxy will understand that. Daniel looked up from his minerals, sensing the serious tone. Is something wrong, Mother? No, little flame. Sarenth lowered her head to nuzzle him gently. Nothing you need to worry about. Continue your studies. But even as she spoke comfort, Sarenth knew the truth. A reckoning was coming. The galaxy was watching. And soon, they would all have to answer the question that had haunted them for 5 years. Could a human truly be Dracari? And what would it cost to prove it? The Galactic Council summit arrived like a storm. Ships from hundreds of species descended upon Draer, their very designs filling the sky above the volcanic wastes. Saren stood on the observation platform overlooking the landing fields, Daniel beside her. The boy was 12 now, tall for his age, but still absurdly small next to his mother. So many different beings, Daniel breathed, watching a crystalline entity float from its ship alongside a massive insectoid diplomat. I have read about them, but seeing them is different. Knowledge and experience are separate teachers, Sarenth agreed. Remember that in the days ahead. She had not told him yet. The message from Corvin had arrived 3 days ago, invoking the ancient rite of challenge of worthiness. The old dragon had chosen his moment perfectly. With the entire galaxy watching, Sarenth could not refuse without appearing weak. And if Daniel failed the traditional trials, she would have to renounce him as her son or forfeit her throne. The opening ceremonies passed in a blur of diplomatic formalities. Representatives exchanged greetings in dozens of languages while automated translators struggled to keep pace. Daniel attended at Sarenth's side, dressed in formal robes adapted from Dracarys style. Many delegates stared at the human child standing among dragons. Some whispered behind appendages and communication devices. Corvin made his move on the second day. He rose during open council, his scarlet scales gleaming with polished aggression. I invoke the challenge of worthiness. I question the status of the human called Daniel as Dracari. The chamber exploded with shocked murmurs. Sarenth felt Daniel tense beside her, but remained outwardly calm. She had prepared for this. State your challenge clearly, Elder Corvin. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. The human claims to be Dracari, yet possesses none of our attributes. No fire, no flight, no scales or claws. I challenge his right to that identity. Let him face the trial of 3 truths and prove himself worthy, or let the queen admit her error. The trial of 3 truths was ancient law, designed to test any Dracari whose worthiness was questioned. It required demonstration of fire mastery, flight capability, and combat prowess. For a human, it was impossible. Corvin had crafted the perfect trap. Sarenth looked down at Daniel. The boy met her eyes and gave the smallest nod. They had discussed this possibility during long nights in her lair. He understood what was at stake. Daniel, you need not accept, she said quietly, only for his ears. We can find another way. No, mother. His voice was steady. If I run from this, they will always question you. Let me try. Sarenth turned back to the council. My son accepts the challenge. 3 days later, the trials began. The galaxy watched through broadcast feeds as a 12-year-old human boy stood before an arena carved from solid volcanic rock. Thousands of beings filled the observation tiers. Every eye focused on Daniel's small form. The trial of fire came first. A massive brazier was brought forth, flames leaping 30 feet into the air. The traditional test required the challenger to breathe fire into the brazier, demonstrating control and power. Daniel approached the flames. The heat washed over him, forcing him to shield his face with his arm. He stopped at what would be a safe distance for a Dracari hatchling, but still dangerously close for human flesh. I cannot breathe fire, he announced clearly, his voice amplified across the arena. My body was not made for it. But the trial is not about having fire. It is about understanding fire. He gestured, and a series of objects were brought forward. Metal rods, crystalline structures, powdered minerals. Daniel had spent 3 days preparing while the diplomatic ceremonies continued. Now he put that preparation to work. Fire is combustion, he explained, arranging the materials with practiced precision. Rapid oxidation releasing heat and light. Dracari fire comes from specialized organs mixing reactive compounds. The flame color indicates temperature. Orange means around 2,000 degrees. Blue means 3,000 or higher. White means even more. He used the metal rods to adjust the airflow into the brazier. The flames shifted from orange to blue. Then he added certain mineral powders, and sections of the flame turned green, then purple. Every Dracari bloodline has a slightly different flame signature based on mineral content in your diet and variations in your biology. The northern clans produce hotter flames because they consume more volcanic minerals. The coastal families have cooler fires with more blue spectrum because of maritime elements. He spoke for 20 minutes, explaining combustion chemistry, thermal dynamics, the physics of flame propagation. He described the exact biological mechanisms that allowed Draer to produce fire without harming themselves. No Draer had ever articulated these things because they simply did it instinctively. When he finished, the arena sat in stunned silence. Elder Vethera was the first to speak. The human cannot breathe fire, but he understands fire better than most of us who can. This satisfies the first truth. Corvin's jaw worked soundlessly. He had expected immediate failure. The vote was called. By a narrow margin, Daniel passed the trial of fire. The trial of flight came next. A cliff overlooked a canyon filled with thermal updrafts from lava flows far below. The traditional test required the challenger to leap and soar on their wings for a minimum of 5 minutes. Daniel stood at the cliff edge, the wind whipping his hair. Behind him lay a strange contraption he had built over 3 days with help from human engineers at the refugee settlement. It looked like wings, but made from lightweight metal frames covered in heat-resistant fabric. "I cannot fly with muscle and membrane," Daniel said, "but I can fly with knowledge and physics." He strapped the glider to his body, the frame extending far beyond his arms. Several Draer elders moved closer, fascinated despite themselves. The human had built artificial wings. Daniel checked the thermal currents with instruments of his own design. He waited for the right moment, then ran toward the edge and jumped. For 3 terrifying seconds, he fell. The crowd gasped. Then he caught an updraft, the glider's wings spreading wide, and he soared. It was not graceful like Draer flight. It was crude, mechanical, entirely dependent on wind and heat. But he flew that he rode the thermals in increasingly confident circles, using his small human weight to maneuver in ways no massive Draer could match. He flew for exactly 5 minutes, then guided himself back to a landing platform. The glider crumpled on impact, and Daniel rolled, breaking his left arm that he stood shakily, cradling the injury, his face pale with pain. But he smiled. "I flew," he said simply. The crowd erupted, some in approval, some in outrage. The vote was called again. This time the margin was wider. Daniel had passed the trial of flight point 2 trials down. 1 remained, and Corvin wore a predator smile, because the trial of combat was where he would ensure the human finally failed. Daniel's broken arm was set and wrapped in a medical cast using human technology. The pain suppressants they gave him were wearing off, and he could feel the throb of displaced bone knitting back together. He sat in Cerintha's private chamber while she paced, her massive form radiating barely controlled fury. "Corvin has modified the combat trials," she growled. "He claims it is to make them fair for your size, but I know better. He has designed them to kill you." Daniel touched the cast gingerly. "Tell me what they are." Cerinth stopped pacing and settled beside him. 3 challenges. First, you must defeat a war-training drone in single combat. These drones are built to test veteran Draer warriors. They have energy shields, plasma weapons, and armor that can withstand sustained flame. No human has ever defeated one. What is the second challenge? You must withstand the heat of judgment for 10 minutes. It is a chamber heated to the temperature of flowing lava. Draer find it uncomfortable. For human biology, it means death within seconds. Daniel nodded slowly, processing this information. And the third, you must prove loyalty to Draer above all else. Traditionally, this means renouncing your birth clan. Cerintha's voice softened. For you, it would mean denouncing humanity itself. They sat in silence. Outside, the twin moons of Draer rose over the volcanic landscape, their light turning the ash clouds silver and gold. "I will not denounce humanity," Daniel said finally. "That would be betraying who I am. But I will find another way to prove loyalty. The drone will kill you, little flame." Cerinth touched his shoulder with one claw, infinitely gentle. "I cannot lose you. You taught me that strength has many forms." Daniel looked up at his mother. "Let me show the galaxy what human strength looks like." The trial of combat began the next day. The arena floor had been cleared except for the war drone, a hovering sphere of dark metal bristling with weapons. It was designed to prepare Draer soldiers for real combat by adapting to their tactics and exploiting their weaknesses. Daniel entered wearing minimal armor, his broken arms strapped tight against his body. He carried no weapon because his undamaged arm could not lift anything heavy enough to damage the drone. The crowd murmured at the sight of him. This small, injured human facing a war machine. The drone activated. Its sensors locked onto Daniel, weapons charging. Then it simply waited, analyzing him, learning from his movements. This was its primary advantage, adaptive intelligence. Daniel did not attack. Instead, he spoke. "Can you define combat?" he called out. The drone's speakers crackled. Combat. Violent confrontation between opposing forces to achieve dominance or destruction of the enemy. And what is the purpose of combat? To defeat the enemy through superior force or strategy. Daniel circled slowly, keeping his distance. The ancient Draer philosopher Rethek wrote that true combat is not about destruction, but about imposing your will. Is this true or false? The drone paused. It was programmed to train warriors, but also to engage with strategic thinking. Statement contains philosophical merit. Combat serves objectives beyond mere violence. Then if I impose my will without violence, have I won the combat? The drone's processors worked faster. This was not a standard combat scenario. Its programming tree branched into philosophical subroutines that had rarely been accessed. Definition unclear. Parameters exceed standard combat protocols. Daniel moved closer. You are programmed to train Draer warriors by defeating them in combat. But your ultimate purpose is to make them stronger, correct? Correct. Training prepares warriors for actual conflict. Then your purpose is not to win, but to teach. And what teaches more? Easy victory or challenging struggle? The drone actually hesitated. Its weapons lowered fractionally. Challenging struggle provides superior learning outcomes. If I ask you to deactivate, you refuse because that defeats your purpose. But if I ask you to consider whether destroying an unarmed, injured opponent teaches anything valuable, what is your conclusion? The philosophical loop was deepening. The drone's central processor diverted more resources to resolving the logic puzzle. Its adaptive intelligence was working against it now, trying to find coherent answers to questions it had never been designed to address. Daniel pressed his advantage. Your programming says to defeat enemies. But am I your enemy, or am I a different kind of challenge? What does a warrior learn from crushing someone who cannot fight back? Insufficient data. Scenario parameters unclear. Combat objectif indéfini. Exactly. Daniel walked right up to the drone. I cannot defeat you with strength, but I have defeated you with questions. I have imposed my will by making you doubt your purpose. That is combat too. He reached out with his good hand and pressed the manual override panel that all war drones had for emergency shutdown. His small human fingers fit perfectly into the access port, something no Draer claw could manage. The drone powered down. Silence filled the arena. Then it erupted into chaos. Half the crowd roared approval. The other half shouted protests. Corvin leaped to his feet. This is not combat. He did not fight. Elder Vethera's voice cut through the noise. He defeated the drone. The rules specify defeat, not method. The human wins the first challenge. The vote went against Corvin. Daniel had passed. The heat of Judgment Chamber was prepared for the second challenge. Daniel stood before it, watching the heat shimmer in the air around the entrance. 10 minutes inside would cook him alive. There was no talking his way out of this one, but Daniel had spent his entire life on Draer. He understood volcanic systems better than most Draer because he had to. Survival had demanded it. He had studied every thermal vent, every air current, every quirk of Draker's geological activity, that he entered the chamber with a pack of equipment. Heat-reflective panels salvaged from ship wreckage, air circulation fans powered by thermal differentials, and a crude heat-resistant suit assembled from mining gear. The items were not forbidden because no Draer had ever thought to use them. Why would they? They were naturally resistant to such temperatures. Daniel worked frantically as the temperature climbed. He positioned the reflective panels to create barriers against direct heat. He activated the fans to pull cooler air from the chamber's intake vents, creating a small zone of relatively breathable atmosphere. He wrapped himself in the suit and crouched in the protected space he had created. It was barely enough. Sweat poured from his body despite the cooling efforts. His skin reddened from ambient heat that leaked through his defenses. But he survived. 10 minutes passed. The doors opened. Daniel stumbled out, severely dehydrated but alive. Corvin said nothing this time. 2 challenges passed. One remained. The trial of loyalty was simple in concept, but devastating in execution. Daniel stood before the assembled council and all the watching species. The question was formal and ancient. Do you renounce your birth species and pledge loyalty to Draer above all others? Every eye focused on the human boy. Sarenth watched from her throne, her expression carefully neutral, though her heart ached. Daniel met his mother's eyes briefly, then turned to address the galaxy. No, he said clearly, I will not renounce humanity. The chamber erupted. Delegates from 100 species spoke at once in dozens of languages. Corvin's roar of triumph cut through the chaos like a blade. He had won. The human had failed the final trial. But Daniel was not finished speaking. I will not renounce humanity, he repeated, his voice amplified across the arena. Because that would be a lie, and Draer do not lie. The noise died down slightly. Beings leaned forward, curious despite themselves. My mother taught me that being Draer is about honor, wisdom, and protecting those in your care. She taught me that fire can warm or destroy, and the choice defines you. She taught me that strength without purpose is just violence. Daniel's words rang clear. These are Draer truths, but they're also human truths. He turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly. You asked me to choose between being human and being Draer, but that choice is false. I am both. My body is human. My heart is Draer. One does not erase the other. Corvin slammed his tail against the stone floor. The trial requires renunciation. The law is clear. The law was written when Draer believed they stood alone, Daniel countered. But the galaxy has changed. Species work together now. The Galactic Council exists because different peoples found strength in unity. How can I prove loyalty to Draer by betraying what I am? He paused, gathering his thoughts. My mother chose me when I was helpless. She could have let me die. Instead, she gathered me in her wings and raised me as her own. That was not weakness. That was the greatest strength possible. Choosing compassion over tradition. Sarenth felt something crack inside her chest. Pride and fear mixed together until she could barely breathe. I pledge my loyalty to Draer, Daniel continued, his voice steady. Not because I hate humanity, but because this is my home. These are my people. My mother taught me, fed me, protected me. She gave me life when I should have died. How could I not serve Draer with everything I am? He looked directly at Corvin. You say I make Draer appear weak. I say I prove Draer are strong enough to embrace what is different. Strong enough to change. Strong enough to choose wisdom over blind tradition. Pretty words, Corvin sneered. But they do not fulfill the trial. Then let me propose something else. Daniel's voice grew stronger. Humanity and Draer need each other. Draer have ruled through power for millennia. But power alone no longer enough in a galaxy of thousands of species. Humans bring innovation, adaptation, different ways of thinking. Together, we could become something greater than either species alone. Elder Vethra rose from her perch. You suggest alliance? More than alliance. Integration. Let other human children be adopted by Draer families who choose to. Let young Draer study with human teachers. Share knowledge, share culture, share strength. Daniel gestured to the assembled species. The galaxy is watching. You can reject me and prove Draer are too rigid to evolve. Or you can accept me and prove Draer lead through wisdom, not just fire. Before anyone could respond, alarms screamed throughout the complex that a technician rushed into the chamber, scales pale with fear. Your Majesty, fleet contacts at the system edge. 40 warships, Crovar's signatures. They are demanding our surrender. The chamber descended into chaos. Delegates fled toward their ships. Council members roared questions. Corvin spread his wings in fury. The Crovar dare attack during a council summit? This is an act of war against the entire galaxy. Sarenth moved to the strategic displays that materialized in the center of the arena. The Crovar fleet was massive, arrayed in offensive formation. They had clearly planned this assault carefully, striking while Draker's attention was focused inward on the trials. Launch the defense fleet, Corvin commanded. We will meet them in battle and burn them from the sky. But Sarenth studied the display more carefully. The Crovar formation was designed to counter traditional Drakkari tactics. Spread wide to avoid concentrated fire, positioned to intercept direct assaults, sensor nets overlapping to prevent flanking maneuvers. They had studied Drakkari warfare and prepared accordingly. A direct assault will cost us dearly, Sarenth said. They outnumber our ready forces and hold superior positioning. Then we die with honor. Corvin's eyes blazed. We do not surrender to prey. Daniel had moved to the display, his young mind processing the tactical situation with the speed Sarenth had trained into him. He saw what the Drakkari were missing because they thought only in terms of traditional combat. They are not prepared for unconventional tactics, he said quietly. Sarenth looked down at her son. Explain. Their formation counters Drakkari methods. Frontal assault, wing formations, overwhelming firepower. But what if we do not fight the way they expect? Daniel's fingers trace patterns on the holographic display. Use deception. Make them think we are surrendering. Draw them closer to the planet where volcanic interference will disrupt their sensors. Then strike from unexpected angles with small units instead of mass formations. Corvin snorted flame. We are not cowards who hide and strike from shadows. That is not the Drakkari way. It is the smart way, Vethera said, her ancient voice cutting through the argument. The child makes sense. We can preserve honor or we can preserve our people. I choose our people. Other elders murmured agreement. The Crovar were an existential threat. Pride meant nothing if everyone was dead. Sarenth made her decision. We follow Daniel's plan. He will coordinate tactics from the command center. You trust a human child with our defense. Corvin's disbelief was total. I trust my son. Sarenth's tone allowed no argument. He has passed 2 trials through intelligence rather than force. Let him prove himself in the 3rd trial differently than you intended. Let him show whether a human can truly serve Draker. She turned to Daniel. Can you do this, little flame? Daniel looked at the display, showing 40 enemy warships approaching his home. Fear flickered across his face for just a moment. Then it hardened into determination. Yes, mother. I can. The battle for Draker began, and a 12-year-old human boy stood at the center of it all, about to prove that loyalty and love were worth more than all the fire in the galaxy. The command center was built for Drakkari, with controls sized for massive claws and displays positioned for beings 3 times human height. Daniel stood on an elevated platform that Sarenth had ordered constructed years ago for his lessons. Now it served a different purpose. His uninjured hand flew across control panels, while his broken arm hung useless in its cast. Broadcast surrender protocols on all frequencies, Daniel ordered. Make it look genuine. Frighten them in the message. Let them think we are beaten. The communications officer, a battle-scarred Drakkari named Threx, hesitated. You want us to lie to the enemy? I want us to win. Daniel did not look up from the tactical display. Drakkari never surrender. So, if we broadcast surrender, they will think we are truly desperate. They will advance more aggressively. Sarenth stood beside her son, translating his rapid strategic standard into proper Drakkari battle cant for the fleet commanders who struggled with the human language. She watched him work with a mixture of pride and terror. He was so small, so young, commanding the defense of an entire world. The surrender broadcast went out. As predicted, the Crovar fleet accelerated, eager to claim their prize before the Drakkari could reconsider. They entered the zone where Draker's volcanic activity interfered with long-range sensors, confident in their numerical superiority. Now, Daniel said quietly, Drakkari fighters erupted from volcanic vents where they had been hiding in the heat and smoke. They did not attack in traditional wing formations. Instead, They moved in small groups of 3 or 4, hitting the Crovar ships from unexpected angles before vanishing back into the thermal interference. The Crovar fleet tried to regroup, but their formation was designed to fight a frontal assault. The scattered hit-and-run tactics confused their command structure. Ships collided, trying to track multiple small threats. Their sensor nets, so carefully positioned, became liabilities as friendly fire incidents mounted. Daniel watched the battle unfold like a grand strategy game. He identified weak points in the Crovar formation and directed strike teams to exploit them. He used volcanic debris as cover, steering enemy ships into areas where the interference was strongest. He even weaponized Draer itself, timing attacks to coincide with volcanic eruptions that filled space with superheated ash and rock. Their flagship is breaking formation, Threx reported. They're trying to retreat to open space where their sensors work properly. Do not let them. Daniel highlighted targets on the display. Send interceptors here and here. Cut off their escape vector. Force them to choose between fighting blind or running deeper into our territory. Sarenth relayed the orders. The Draer pilots, initially skeptical of taking commands from a human child, had begun to trust his tactical insight. The interceptors moved into position, and the Crovar flagship found itself trapped between Draer fighters and volcanic interference zones. The battle lasted 37 minutes. When it ended, 14 Crovar ships were destroyed, and the rest were fleeing the system in disarray. Not a single Draer fighter had been lost, though several were damaged. The command center erupted in victorious roars. Draer warriors who had doubted the human boy now looked at him with something approaching reverence. He had done the impossible, won a battle against superior numbers without losing a single life on his side. But Daniel was not celebrating. He stared at the casualty reports from the Crovar ships. Thousands dead, beings who would never go home, never see their families again. The weight of that settled on his young shoulders like a physical burden. Sarenth saw the tears tracking down his face. She lowered her massive head beside him, speaking softly so only he could hear. You weep for the enemy. They were alive. Now they are not. Because of my orders. Daniel's voice cracked. How can everyone celebrate death? Because you saved Draer. You protected your people. Sarenth nuzzled him gently. But you also understand the cost of that protection. That is not weakness, little flame. That is wisdom. A true warrior knows when to breathe fire and when to show mercy. You won the battle, but you still mourn the necessity of it. That proves you are exactly what I have always known you to be. What is that? My son. Draer in the ways that matter most. They returned to the council chamber where delegates had witnessed the entire battle through broadcast feeds. The assembly stood in stunned silence as Sarenth and Daniel entered. Corvin was there, his expression unreadable. Elder Vethera spoke first. The human child has proven himself in combat more effectively than any warrior in recent memory. 0 Draer casualties against an enemy fleet that should have destroyed us. I vote to accept him as Draer. Other elders added their voices. One by one, they acknowledged what Daniel had done. He had not won through traditional means, but he had won. And in doing so, he had shown that Draeri's strength could evolve without losing its core. Finally, only Corvin remained. All eyes turned to him. The old dragon stared at Daniel for a long moment, then at Sarenth. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost gentle. I was wrong. The words seemed to cost him greatly. The child has honor, even if his honor looks different than ours. He defended Draer not because he had to, but because he chose to, and he wept for those he defeated, showing compassion even in victory. Corvin lowered his head slightly, a gesture of respect. He is more Draeri than many who were born with scales and fire. I vote to accept. The formal recognition was proclaimed across all frequencies. Daniel, human by birth, was now legally and culturally Draeri. Son of Sarenth, citizen of Draer, protector of his people. 10 years later, Daniel stood in Sarenth's lair with a young human girl who had just arrived from the refugee settlements. The girl was terrified, orphaned like he had been, facing a world that seemed designed to kill her. This is Sarenth, Daniel told her in gentle standard. She looks fierce, but she is kind. She is powerful, but she is wise. She is a dragon, but she is also a mother. The girl looked up at the massive copper-scaled dragon looming above her. Will she eat me? No. Daniel knelt beside the child, remembering his own fear so many years ago. She will protect you. She will teach you. She will love you. And one day, you will stand where I stand now, helping another child understand that family is not about what you look like. It is about who chooses to keep you safe. Sarenth extended one claw, infinitely gentle despite its size. The girl reached out hesitantly and touched it. The Dragon Queen rumbled with satisfaction, a sound like distant thunder that somehow conveyed warmth and welcome. More Drakari families had begun adopting human children. More humans had requested to study on Drakkar. The wall between species was crumbling, not through force or law, but through love. One child at a time, one choice at a time. Daniel watched his mother gather the girl close, folding her wings around the small, frightened form exactly as she had done for him 12 years ago. And he understood that what had begun as one desperate act of compassion had become something larger than either species alone, that it had become hope. It had become proof that the strongest bonds are not formed by those who are alike, but by those who choose each other despite every difference. And that love, in all its forms, was the most powerful force in the galaxy.